KBJ has done it again. She is refusing to hear Trump's emergency application for the Supreme Court to implement its election integrity order. And that's because a fellow DEI judge in Boston, appointed by Barack Obama, that would be Indira Talwani, she had earlier blocked the implementation of his executive order. Now, the Trump administration is scrambling to get some federal oversight over our elections, due in part to mail-in ballots. And in Talwani's order, she had cited the Help America Vote Act of 2002 and claimed that implementing safeguards against illegal voting in our elections would stop some people from voting. That would be the point. We want to stop illegal people from voting. I don't know why these DEI justices can't grasp that simple point. But here we go, once again, with KBJ staking out a position on the Trump's effort to get election integrity in our elections. Now, Jackson declined the Trump administration's request for immediate administrative stay and gave the White House 7 days to respond to the emergency application. Now, she also did not rule out the potential of a full stay, and therefore the bench may rule on the matter in potentially a week. And that would be a big development. Hopefully, the conservative-leaning court can recognize that Trump has authority under the Constitution because the Article 2 powers of the executive branch give him authority to manage the executive agencies, and that includes the U.S. Postal Service. So Justice Jackson's ruling is a very important one right now because of the fight on Capitol Hill over the Save America Act. And of course, we just recently heard from GOP fake majority leader John Thune in the Senate, who claims that he cannot get 15 of his Republican colleagues to go along with nuking the filibuster. Now, we're talking about the zombie filibuster, not the talking filibuster, which would require a bare majority of 51 votes, and that might include the Senate president or the vice president, in this case, J.D. Vance, casting a deciding vote to get Save America Act through after a talking filibuster. Now, unfortunately, it also looks like there are only a few senators that are on board with canceling the Senate recess to stay there and fight for America's election integrity. Now, it's very important that they do this, but according to Scott Presler, an election activist, of course, he says that only Mike Lee and Ashley Moody are willing to go along, on the record at least, with canceling the Senate recess. So why is it that our elections are so low priority? We can get all sorts of funding for the defense budget and for other acts through Congress, and it doesn't seem like election integrity is very high up on there. And that's why Trump has had to resort to trying to use the U.S. Postal Service to track ballots and trace them and look for suspicious activity and to refer that to the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security. But it looks like our GOP senators don't have the priorities straight, and they haven't gotten the message that voters are not very happy. Now, John Thune is coming up in the 2028 Senate election. There are quite a few rhinos up for grabs, and it looks like the primary battles will be on because they are getting in the way of the should be bipartisan agenda to secure our elections. And if we don't have that in America, what do we have? Now, it should be noted that Trump did get a modest win recently with a 3-judge panel in D.C. Court of Appeals. They put a hold on a lower court ruling that had blocked the Postal Service from implementing his measures. And that gave the Trump administration a temporary victory. But it's very suspicious how dozens of blue states refuse to go along with the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security with their screening out of deceased and non-resident and non-citizen voters from these dirty voter rolls. And these states are fighting tooth and nail to prevent transparency in the elections. And there has been some back and forth over what that means. They claim that they don't want to have anyone turned away at the voting booth, but that would be within 90 days of the election in many states. And so the window is snapping shut on that. We have a November election coming up. It is almost August. This is not going to be doable. It doesn't look like, and as according to the radical activists at Democracy Docket, the Department of Justice has lost 17 cases that were attempts to get a look at these dirty voter rolls. So why are they hiding it all from us? It's a great question. Do you think they're cheating in our elections? I think that it is very difficult to determine, and that is a design feature. It is not a bug of our system. And so we need to go to all paper ballots, one election day, and voter IDs, things that weren't such a controversial position to have in the recent memory. I mean, even Kamala Harris and other prominent Democrats, Hillary Clinton has talked about election security measures. She had suspicion over our election system that she voiced recently. And so it seems like this could be a common sense compromise position, but the Democrats, they have staked it out like a partisan issue, like this is the second coming of, Jim Crow, that there's voting rights violations implied with securing our elections. No, that is not the case, because if we don't have free and fair elections, then we shouldn't have any kind of confidence in our voting system, and that is a recipe for disaster. So weigh in with your thoughts after this story. We always appreciate you watching us at the Becker Brief.